Good evening, this is News Front Agency with me, Catherine Nolan, and our weekly wrap Front Line. Let's take a look at week's most breaking events. UK Prime Minister Theresa May has arrived in China with the largest business delegation her government has taken on an overseas trip. The Prime Minister is seeking to build on the initiative launched under David Cameron to create a golden era of Anglo-Chinese relations with better business, diplomatic, political and cultural ties. She will hold talks on the finance, high-tech and energy sectors, as well as the creative industries, infrastructure, food and life sciences. With Brexit looming, opening up new overseas markets is crucial for Britain, especially if trade with the EU takes a hit. China offers the prospect of huge new business opportunities for UK firms, with its fast expanding middle class, as well as being a major source for tourism in Britain. Downing Street said the scheme, which is seeing China invest billions of pounds in infrastructure in Asia and Europe, could contribute to global growth if it was well implemented, but said it had to meet international standards. Poland's Senate has approved a controversial bill that makes it illegal to accuse Poles of complicity in the Nazi Holocaust. The bill also prohibits describing Nazi death camps in Poland as Polish. It sets fines over maximum 3 years jail term as punishment. The proposal caused a weekend rift with Israel, which accuses Poland of attempting to change history. The bill must be signed off by the president before entering into law. The Polish president Andrzej Duda said his country has the right to defend historical truth. The Israelis are furious about the bill, which Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has described as an attempt to rewrite history and deny the Holocaust. There was particular anger as it came just a few days after the Polish president promised to engage in dialogue with Israel about the bill amid the outcry. Now Israeli MPs are breaking a bill that would expand Israel's existing Holocaust denial laws to include a 5-year jail sentence for anyone denying or minimizing the role of Nazi collaborators, including Poles, in crimes committed in the Holocaust. President Trump delivered his first State of the Union before a joint session of Congress on Tuesday night. These addresses are typical opportunities for American presidents to highlight their achievements and provide a vision for the country going forward. To that end, Trump pitched a framework for immigration reform that was released by the White House last week and touted his recent record on trade, infrastructure and the economy. But the night was atypical in other ways. For one, Trump delivered the address under the shadow of the Russian investigation and amid tensions over his administration's relationship with the intelligence community, not to mention its relation with Congress. However, his first speech had no pivot. There was no fresh approach to nation's problems or its political stalemate in Washington. There was no new Trump. The United States must make its nukes so strong and powerful so as to deter any aggression that might come from state and non-state actors, President Donald Trump said, noting that the world is sadly not ready to ditch nuclear weapons. As part of our defense, we must modernize and rebuild our nuclear arsenal, hopefully never having to use it, but making it so strong and so powerful that it will deter any acts of aggression by any other nation or anyone else, Trump said. He added that the magic moment when countries would be ready to get rid of their nuclear arsenals has not yet arrived. They are not there yet, sadly. One of the greatest threats, according to Trump, comes from North Korea, and the US president took the opportunity to bash Pyongyang yet again. We need only look at the depraved character of the North Korean regime to understand the nature of the nuclear threat it could pose to America and our allies, he said. Trump vowed not to repeat mistakes of past administrations, referring to the previous US government's policy and its complacency and concessions that backfired in the one form of aggression and provocation by the North. Hello, Phil.
Hi, how are you, Kathy?
I'm fine, thank you. So, what inspired you to write a book?
Well, as you may know, many of us, independent journalists and analysts as well, have been immersed in this whole media and propaganda and West versus East media warfare that's been going on for the last few years. And what possessed me to write the book was just, I eventually compiled so much data, information, made so many contacts, and saw this whole thing, escalate to the point where it's really dangerous now. And I thought, well, how can I do something to let people know the other side? I mean, let people know that this other side is valid, that there are a lot of people that are not some kind of trolls or paid Kremlin people that are just activists that are concerned and are raising their voices. So it just made sense. I mean, since I'm in a kind of unique position because I know lots and lots of people by virtue of just having by chance or because of things that were happening, met them in Russia and all across the world and that are involved in this situation. So it made sense to get together some of their ideas, what motivated them, and just get an honest take on really who these people are that some people in the Western mainstream media and even in government accuse of being paid trolls and what have you.
I see. So the book is not without a humor, but at the same time, the psychology of social activism in support of both Vladimir Putin and Russia. So why Russia became an issue of the book?
Well, I mean, like I said, since I was involved in this as a journalist and an analyst, and since I know most of the media that are involved on both sides for one reason or another, and even a lot of the Western media before, I had a PR company, and so I had a lot of relations with Western media in Europe, some in Russia as well. And since since 2014, I've been associated a good bit with some Russian media, and so I know a lot of people there. And then in social media, it's part of what my job was, to analyze technology, social media, and these new emerging technologies that we all see. And so, being involved on the Russia side is a function of just wanting to tell the truth that's not being told in the West about a great many people and systems and governments that are being villainized and victimized, in my assessment. So that's how Russia became kind of the subject of it. It's really kind of not rocket science, if you're a social media expert and see all this stuff going on. People like me are sort of imbued with a natural desire to figure out how things work, what the truth of them is. I've been doing social media since the very first ones were ever launched. The ones that are dead, long dead by now. We trained ourselves to not only analyze these new platforms, but figure out how to manipulate them for marketing purposes and so forth and so on. So there's a lot of people in that vein, and that's kind of how my part of it got started. And like I said, the Russia aspect is just a natural consequence of me being like these other people. The psychology of it is people, if they're not inside of a media bubble, if somehow they get outside of that bubble and their natural instincts come into play, what I'm speaking of now is fair play and things like that. My ire about all of this and that anger or frustration of a lot of these other people that are in the book came about more or less about the time the Sochi Olympics happened. That was like the world's worst case of bad sportsmanship I'd ever seen in my life. Being an athlete in the past in my life, and in an era where some things were a little bit different, sportsmanship was a totally different thing back in the 1960s and 70s. You just didn't do things like we saw the Obama administration and some of these other players doing at Sochi. I mean, you put the politics on one side and then you play the game and then see what happens and then you evaluate at the end. You don't do it during the game. And so a lot of people in this book, probably you and a bunch of people that are watching right now, really got upset because, wow, Russia comes out, tries to create something really beautiful, invites the world there. It's all supposed to be peaceful and in the spirit of the Olympics. And then all of a sudden it's a trash contest. So a lot of people got mad after that. And then other things happened, many of them planned, I suppose. And the sociology or psychology of this troll myth is that people just get upset. I mean, sometimes people can see that something's wrong. It's not fair. It shouldn't be that way. They don't like it. And then they decide to do something about it. And so naturally, the other side of this argument is inside of a media bubble that's almost impenetrable. I know because I used to work in it. And so a lot of they're willing to be apathetic and watch these other operators, if you want to call them that, try to create a narrative that's against Vladimir Putin and Russia and anybody that would say anything positive about those two things. So we all kind of know that already. So the sociology and psychology of it is a lot of people really got upset about this new Cold War, is what it ends up turning out to be. So that's the interesting part of it. Some of my colleagues commented on that and said, you know, the book is about the psychology. I didn't think of it that way initially, but I did want to show that I did want to find out what commonality all these people had, and almost to a man or woman, they had the same feeling. They got upset. Some of them because of Odessa, some of them because of things prior to that, like the breakup of Yugoslavia, the Balkans and stuff, but mostly right at the pinnacle of nastiness that became Sochi.
Yes, I see. So in addition to positive reviews, there are some negative backlash against your book. So how do you perceive criticism?
Well, I guess it's no big secret there's another side to this argument. So I guess I can call the other side the other side. A lot of times in social media and even in the media now, and it's like a tabloid media is now, there's a lot of anger, frustration, meanness. And, you know, these people are often miscategorized as being stupid or not being intelligent or not being brilliant. Make no mistake about it. The people at these think tanks in Washington and all over Europe and some of these other entities that are speaking the globalist narrative, they're not stupid. This has been planned. It's almost mechanized. As you know, human nature is nothing can truly be well-oiled and mechanized because people make mistakes. They don't follow the rules that they're supposed to follow. They goof up, and we see that happening more and more because the other side, or even the Russian side, sometimes gets a little bit arrogant and feels like they're on the right path and they make stupid mistakes. But that being said, I precipice this with that because a lot of people think these guys on the other side are stupid. They're not. Some of these people are geniuses. Some of them are PR geniuses. I know some of them. Very powerful PR people. They have whole office buildings full of people trying to figure out how to take the right action about any particular thing that you can name. This book, as an interesting course, hasn't been talked about that much. And I'll be honest with you and say that part of my plan was to make sure that it was talked about. Of course, I have very limited resources compared to any of the other players you might see, but I do have some capabilities. And it's been difficult. The other side that I talk about has tried to provoke some of the people in the book, me, into engaging over a petty argument or announcement that the Atlantic, some people that work with the Atlantic Council have made. One of the people under Elliot Higgins, that I call them sometimes minions because in a way they act like minions, but that wrote an article that was not based on any fact or anything, just a negative thing to try to get me to be angry and to pull me into an argument with what I would term mid-level opposition trolls, if you want to call them that. But of course I didn't bite. Some of the other people that are more, some of the people that I know that are more defensive about such things, they did comment and stuff like that, but that just lends credence and gives visibility to the people that are criticizing you. I haven't seen any other criticism. There's a reason for that. It's not because the book's not a bestseller. It's not because a lot of people hadn't bought the book or aren't talking about it. It's because if the other side lends credibility to the book, then sooner or later somebody's going to have to call my colleagues, me, or some designate onto the carpet of live TV and say, why did you write this best-selling book? What does this mean? What does that mean? At that instance, I feel confident that me or some of my colleagues can provide a dossier on all of the things that have happened. It's a logical, I mean, anybody could. If we wanted to, we could lay it all out and say, here's the lie, here's the real lie. This was proven wrong, this was proven wrong. CNN said that they were doing all this against Russia for the ratings. Come on. I think, and so without going into a long tirade about that, the other side is being smart. They're not paying too much attention to it. People lay off for this reason or that reason because they don't want to be, you know, they have their own strategies. Every media outlet has their own strategies. So there's been some negativity, but on the side of people that have read it, there's not been one person that said anything negative. I was actually, it's heartrending. It's nice to see people find that something that you did has got some value, or to say it's brilliant, or that it's good, or say I got this out of it, or I got that out of it. And that's what I'm getting. So it's been far more positive than negative. I challenge the other side to say something negative about it, because it's all as truthful as it can be. The people are genuine. There's no such thing as a troll army. If there were, I tell people this in jest a lot of times. I'm one of the top people that would be named a criminal troll in the world. I know all of these people. If anybody were paying me or these other people, or had an army in St. Petersburg to help Donald Trump get elected or Hillary Clinton to lose, they'd have 500,000 retweets on their Twitter. I mean, the money would be flowing like water. The people in this book don't have any money. The people in this book, you can't prove that they've got 500 tweets. You can prove that I've got an article for RT or someplace that has 4,000 Facebook likes, but that's a function of my capability as a social media person. That's not a function of Vladimir Putin paying Facebook. So I think and everybody listening to this show knows this is just all a crock. I mean, but it's a valuable book. I really hope that somebody will grill it and say, okay, who's this guy? Who's that guy? There's going to be some things in that might be inconsistent in the book. Of course, people make mistakes. I can be confused by this person or that person. They might appear to be really great, but these people said what they wanted to say themselves. And it's up to them. My part in the middle is just talking about how this all started, and where I think it's going to go, and where I hope it goes. So I don't, it's not a negative. Even if they criticize it, that's fine, because they need to. That's a conversation. Margarita Simonian is a great lady that took the time to write the afterword for this book. It wasn't some contribution like bombastic or something like maybe some of my other colleagues or associates might have presented, but it's a description of what the media bubble in the West is like, and how discourse and how discussion has gone away. And that's really the essence of what I tried to get to come out with all these people. We just need to talk. If you don't agree with some of these people, don't call them a troll and say you're being paid by whoever, the Kremlin or Vladimir Putin. Prove that what they're saying is wrong. Prove what they're saying is wrong. Don't just say it's wrong. This is another function of social media. It's like the old chat rooms where people can flame somebody. People get into just fighting. They want to argue. And when they start losing, then they get mad and call you names. So, I mean, I could talk all day about this kind of stuff. I probably forgot more about this social media than most people will ever know. But the thing about Putin's Praetorian, I took some heat because of the name, but I had to do a tongue-in-cheek on it. I had to say, Putin's Praetorians, come on, in a way, yes, we're defending Vladimir Putin. We're his closest guard, the people that stand there and say, okay, he's a good guy, he's a good leader, don't mess with him. But by the same token, it's tongue-in-cheek. It's like he doesn't have any Praetorians. If you're telling the truth, you don't need any Praetorians. You're just telling the truth. Vladimir Putin, this is the crux of this entire argument. The rest of the leaders in the world are not representing their people. They're representing their people in what they think is the best interest of the people of America, or wherever it might be. Vladimir Putin is representing the people of Russia. He takes criticism and all these jibes, and all this nastiness is about him doing what he's supposed to do. His job's not to take care of the people in America or Germany. His job's to take care of the Russian people. And that's why he's got a 90% approval rating. These other guys, and everybody in their countries know it, have another agenda. And so there it is. I mean, that's the start of the story and the end. Bad sportsmanship. You're trying to do things the way you want to do them for other reasons that you're not saying, and you're willing to trash somebody else that's doing what he's supposed to be doing for his country. That's it.
Okay, Phil. So guys appointed here that we are out of time already. So it was very interesting to hear from you. Thank you for taking your time, and goodbye.
Of course. Have a good day. Thank you for having me on. Thank you, guys.
That's it for today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, read us in social networks, and stay tuned. Goodbye and see you next week.